Hey, what's up everybody? Diego here. Today our technician Shane will be showing us how to remove the display, remove the VHB, install new VHB, and replace the display. Woo! Shane doing work. Shut down the iMac and unplug the power cable. Disconnect any peripherals and place it on an ESD safe surface with the display facing forward. Wait 2 minutes. Insert the foam wedge between the stand and the display so it covers the power receptacle. We'll be using the display removal tool or pizza cutter, so you'll want to check the condition of the wheel or blade. If there is any sign of wear, replace the wheel with a new one. Insert the tool between the display and the rear housing. Hold the display removal tool perpendicular to the edge of the display. Roll the tool back and forth along the top edge, but avoid the area around the camera. Roll the tool back and forth until it moves with no resistance. Move to the sides as the VHB releases. Avoid hitting the tool on the chin as it can damage the blade. Use the flat end of a black stick to check for any missed areas on the sides or top. Insert the flat end and move it along the opening to check that the VHB has released. Carefully separate the display panel from the top of the rear housing. Tilt the display open just enough to release the EDP and display power cables. On the EDP cable, flip the locking lever and pull the cable straight out of the connector. Pull the power cable straight out of the connector. Slowly tilt the display down. Use the display removal tool or black stick as needed. Pull the tabs to release the bottom strips of VHB. When the display panel is completely free of VHB, remove it and store it in an ESD safe bag. Now that the display is off, the real work can begin. Cleaning off the VHB from the rear housing and the display. You need to be careful not to damage the mylar on the display and around the wireless antennas. Use the flat end of a black stick and your fingers to pull the VHB strips. Remove any remaining adhesive by wiping the rear housing and the back of the display panel with an IPA wipe. Before proceeding on repairs in the chin area, you'll also want to remove the chin strap. It's a first step for removing the logic board, power supply, and the speakers. Check the service guide for the particular model you are servicing for specific instructions about removal of the chin strap. Once you remove the screws, you can use a black stick to gently lift the chin strap and remove it. At this point, you can proceed with any necessary repair procedures on the iMac. When your other repairs are complete, you'll need to install the chin strap and the new VHB. Place the chin strap in the rear housing. Be sure to position the mylar ridge on the chin strap to the left side of the enclosure. Use the flat end of a black stick to hold the chin strap in place as you install the screws. Check the service guide for the appropriate VHB strips to install on the iMac you are servicing. VHB strips are a one-time use part. The rear housing has alignment holes for the placement of the VHB strips. Remove the paper release liner and align the strip with the rear housing. Use the pointed end of a black stick to align the VHB strip. With the black stick in the alignment hole, position the VHB strip on the edge of the rear housing. Use your finger to smooth the strip and to verify there are no bumps. Repeat the process for the other strips. If a strip doesn't align correctly, remove it and start again. For the models with the microphone in the chin area, be sure the VHB aligns correctly and doesn't cover the microphone hole. You don't want your customer to return with a microphone issue. With the chin strap and the VHB installed and the old VHB cleaned off the back of the display panel, we're ready to replace the display panel. Before we close it up, do a last check that all cables and screws are in the right place on the iMac. Place the display panel on the chin of the rear housing. Align the panel so that it is centered and seated. Use the display removal tool to check alignment of the display with the sides of the rear housing. If not properly lined up, adjust the display panel and check again. Anchor the display panel with a strip of painter's tape at the bottom of the display and the chin. Step back and recheck the alignment of the display panel. Adjust it if necessary. Place 2 or 3 vertical pieces of tape along the bottom for added support. Use one hand to hold the display while you use the other to release the release liners on the bottom VHB strips at the chin. Tilt the display forward but leave enough space to connect the EDP and power cables to the logic board. Connect both the EDP and power cables. Check that the connectors are firmly seated and close the locking levers. Then, remove the release liners on the sides and the top. Tilt the display panel into place. Use the display roller to adhere the VHB to the display glass while you hold the display with your other hand. Roll only upward or side to side. Don't pinch or press the display. It may damage the glass. On the right and left sides of the display, start at the bottom edge and roll upward. Do not roll down. Remove the painter's tape and the service wedge. Clean the display glass with a clean, damp, and lint-free cloth. Use an IPA wipe to remove any VHB residue. It's always a good idea to clean the iMac and at the same time do a visual inspection to make sure it's good to go. That's it for now. Check out the links below for service documentation and other information. We'll see you soon.
To perform this procedure, you must be qualified to service this specific product. Use extreme caution when troubleshooting with the display panel removed, whether or not the computer is on. Before beginning this repair, unplug the computer power cord and wait at least 2 minutes for the electricity to discharge. Before performing this repair, remove the components in order. Refer to the service guide for detailed instructions. Be sure to have all required tools on hand. Follow proper ESD guidelines. Use the pointed end of a black stick to gently flip open the lock bar on the camera cable. Grasp the cable and pull it out of the connector. Remove the 2 T4 screws that secure the camera. Gently grasp the camera and remove it. Position the replacement camera and install it with 2 T4 screws. Remove the protective film from the lens. Carefully insert the camera cable into the connector. Flip the lock bar closed and press around the edges to secure it. Install the components in order. Refer to the service guide for detailed instructions. Symptoms of an improperly installed camera may include no camera operation, intermittent camera issues, or blurred or fuzzy images. Refer to the service guide for troubleshooting. To perform this procedure, you must be qualified to service this specific product. Unplug the computer power cord and wait at least 2 minutes for the electricity to discharge. Before performing this repair, remove the components in order. Refer to the service guide for detailed instructions. Be sure to have all required tools on hand. Follow proper ESD guidelines. iMac camera microphone cables have one combined connector to the logic board and 2 separate connectors on the camera housing. Use the pointed end of a black stick to gently flip open the lock bar on the camera board. Grasp the cable and unplug it. Use the pointed end of a black stick to disconnect the microphone cable, which is behind the camera cable. Use the flat end of a black stick to open up the lock bar on the logic board. Pull the cable, not the lock bar, to disconnect the camera microphone cable from the logic board. Position the camera microphone cable in the rear housing so that the bend in the cable routes under the fan. Slide the microphone cable evenly into the connector on the microphone board. Connect the camera cable to both the camera and the logic board until no pins are visible. Flip the lock bars closed. Gently press the lock bars to secure each end of the cable. Install the components in order. Refer to the service guide for detailed instructions. Symptoms of an improperly installed camera microphone cable may include an undetected camera or distorted audio. Refer to the service guide for troubleshooting.
To perform this procedure, you must be qualified to service this specific product. Unplug the computer power cord and wait at least 2 minutes for the electricity to discharge. Before performing this repair, remove the components in order. Refer to the service guide for detailed instructions. Be sure to have all required tools on hand. Follow proper ESD guidelines. iMac camera microphone cables have one combined connector to the logic board and 2 separate connectors to the camera housing. Use the pointed end of a black stick to gently flip open the lock bar on the camera board. Grasp the cable and unplug it. Use the pointed ends of 2 black sticks to disconnect the microphone cable. This is located behind the camera cable. Use the pointed end of a black stick to flip open the lock bar on the logic board. Pull the cable, not the lock bar, to disconnect the camera microphone cable from the logic board. Position the camera microphone cable in the rear housing. Slide the microphone cable evenly into the connector on the microphone board. Connect the camera cable to both the camera and the logic board until no pins are visible. Flip the lock bars closed. Gently press the lock bars to secure each end of the cable. Install the components in order. Refer to the service guide for detailed instructions. Symptoms of an improperly installed camera microphone cable may include an undetected camera or distorted audio. Refer to the service guide for troubleshooting.
Hey, what's up friends? Diego here. Today our tech Shane will show you how to replace the hard drive on a 21.5-inch iMac. We'll be using the 2017 model, so if you're working on a different model, that's alright, just make sure to check your service guide. Ensure that our customers have backed up all their data before we remove the hard drive. Follow the first steps below to start at this point. Use a black stick to disconnect the combo cable from the hard drive. Remove the hard drive and bumpers together. That was pretty simple. Now we're going to replace the hard drive. Place the hard drive into the cradle. Be sure that the bumpers lay in place and don't get pinched. Plug the combo cable into the hard drive. Before you reinstall the left speaker, be sure that the power button cable is seated in the channel on the side of the speaker. Follow the last steps below to complete this repair. When your repair is complete, you'll have to prepare the new hard drive. Check out the article TP767, Reinstalling the Software that Came with the Computer. Alright friends, that's it. We'll see you next time. Today our tech Shane is going to walk you through removal and replacement of the power supply on a 21.5-inch iMac. We'll be using a 2017 model, so if you're working with another model, be sure to check your service guide. Follow the steps below to begin at this point. Disconnect the power button connector from the power supply and move it out of the way. This part is not replaceable, so if you damage it, you will have to replace the rear housing. Disconnect the power signal cable from the logic board. Remove the 2 screws from the bottom of the power supply. Slide the power supply slightly up and out of the chin. Reach under the logic board and disconnect the DC power cable from the back of the logic board. When you're lifting the power supply, be careful not to rotate it, as it could make contact with the inductors on the logic board. Disconnect the AC filter cable by pinching the cable connector to release it, and pull the cable toward the left speaker. This is a tight connection. Pinch and pull hard on the connector, not the cable. Remove the power supply. Now we're going to show you how to replace the power supply. Position the power supply over the rear housing chin. Connect the AC cable. This cable only connects in one direction. Connect the DC power cable to the logic board. Check that the cable is securely connected. lower the power supply into the chin well. Reinstall 2 lower power supply screws. Connect the power signal cable to the logic board. Connect the power button cable to the power supply. Follow the last steps below to complete this repair. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.
Unplug the computer power cord and wait at least 2 minutes for the electricity to discharge. Before performing this repair, remove the components in order. Refer to the service guide for detailed instructions. Be sure to have all required tools on hand. Follow proper ESD guidelines. The hard drive power and data cables differ between models. Disconnect the hard drive data cable and the hard drive power cable from the back of the logic board. Connect the hard drive data cable and the hard drive power cable to the back of the logic board. Refer to the reassembly notes in the service guide for detailed instructions. Install the components in order. Refer to the service guide for detailed instructions. Symptoms of an improperly installed hard drive cable may include startup issues and intermittent shut. Before performing this repair, remove the components in order. Refer to the service guide for detailed instructions. Be sure to have all required tools on hand. Follow proper ESD guidelines. Use the flat end of a black stick to disconnect the audio cable. Move the cable away from the logic board to avoid damaging it, which would require rear housing replacement. Disconnect the power button cable from the power supply board. Disconnect the left speaker cable from the logic board. Remove all cables from the cable clip on the rear housing. Flip open the lock bar and pull the camera microphone cable straight out of the logic board connector. Use the flat end of a black stick to release the 2 pieces of tape over the wireless antenna cable connectors. Use ESD-safe tweezers to disconnect the 4 wireless antenna cables. Grasp behind the cable head and pull straight up. Remove the 4 T10 screws from the logic board. Lay the computer down to remove the 4 T8 screws from the heatsink. Note the different screw lengths. Disconnect the power supply data cable and move it away from the logic board. Carefully pull the partially attached logic board up. Tilt the logic board away from the rear housing. Support the logic board with one hand. Press the connector tab to disconnect the large power cable from the back of the logic board. Continue to support the logic board while lifting it away from the rear housing. Verify that the tamper indicator labels on the heatsink are intact. If the labels have been removed or altered, the logic board is considered out of warranty and is not eligible for exchange. Be sure to order the correct replacement logic board. Refer to Apple Service article OP500, How to Identify Apple Service Parts Serial Numbers and Update Them in Repairs. Connect the components to the replacement logic board. Ensure that the rear housing insulator is installed. Refer to the service guide for detailed instructions. Support the logic board while aligning it with the power supply cables in the rear housing. Connect the power supply cable to the back of the logic board. Place the logic board into the chin area. Seat the 2 pins on the I/O connectors into the indentations above the port openings. Position the logic board with small movements until the pins click into place. Press the logic board down to seat the pins. Connect the power supply data cable to the front of the logic board. Loosely install the 2 T10 screws on the bottom of the logic board to secure it. Loosely install the 2 T10 screws on the top of the logic board. Lay the computer down and install the 4 T8 screws on the heatsink as shown. Place the left speaker and hard drive combo cable into the rear housing clip. Connect the power supply button cable to the power supply board. Connect the camera microphone cable to the logic board. Flip the lock bar closed. Press the bar to secure the cable. Connect the left speaker cable to the logic board. Connect the wireless cables to the wireless card. Connect the audio cable to the logic board. Insert an SD card, a USB cable, and 2 Thunderbolt cables to check the alignment of the logic board ports in the rear housing. Once the port alignment is verified, tighten the logic board screws. Apply the new Ethernet ID label, which came with the replacement logic board, to the bottom of the stand. Install the components in order. Refer to the service guide for detailed instructions. Use Blackboard Serializer to set the serial number on the replacement logic board. Symptoms of an improperly installed logic board may include no power or kernel panic. Refer to the
Hey,
service.
what's up everybody? Diego here. Today our tech Shane will go through removal and replacement of the logic board on a 21.5-inch iMac. We'll be using the 2017 model, so if you're working on another model, that's okay. Just make sure to use your service guides. Follow the steps below to begin at this point. Remove the 2 screws from the right speaker and disconnect the speaker cable from the logic board. Disconnect the power button cable from the power supply. This is a necessary precaution because the power button cable is not replaceable. Use a black stick to disconnect the audio cable from the lower right side of the logic board. On the lower left side of the logic board, disconnect the microphone flex cable. Flip the locking lever up and gently pull the flex cable out of the connector. Carefully tape the microphone flex cable to the rear housing with painter's tape. Remove the round piece of Mylar tape covering the logic board screw underneath the microphone cable. Place the piece of Mylar tape on the rear housing while you remove the logic board. Working up the left side of the logic board, disconnect the power supply signal cable, the left speaker cable, and the camera cable from the logic board. On older models, loosen the tape that adheres the hard drive cables or combo cable to the rear housing. Remove the cables from the clip on the rear housing. Slide the wireless card support tool into place between the rear housing and the wireless card. Remove the 2 screws from the brackets that hold the antennas in place. Disconnect the 4 antenna cables from the wireless card with the antenna cable tool. Remove the wireless card support tool. Remove 4 screws from the logic board. Remove 4 screws from the heatsink fin stack. You might want to lay the computer down while removing the screws from the heatsink, so that way they don't fall into the chin well. Remove the antenna cable from the groove on the side of the right speaker. Slide the right speaker a little to the right and away from the logic board. Wiggle the logic board slightly to lift it up and carefully remove it from the rear housing. Tilt the logic board forward to disconnect the hard drive power and data cables and the DC power cable on the back of the logic board. Remove the logic board from the rear housing, holding it by the edges. Place it in an ESD-safe bag. Verify that the tamper indicator labels on the heatsink are intact. Now we're going to show you how to replace the logic board. When installing a replacement logic board, transfer the SSD, wireless card, hard drive combo cable, and the memory to the new logic board. Hold the logic board in place over the chin well. Connect the hard drive power, hard drive data, and DC power cables to the logic board. Notice the 2 alignment pins on the I/O connectors that insert into blind holes in the rear housing. Move the logic board into the chin well with small movements and feel for the pins to click into place. Plug in an SD card, USB, and USB-C cables to ensure correct I/O alignment with the ports on the rear housing. Reinstall the right speaker by placing it behind the logic board and sliding it down into the rear housing. Replace the 2 speaker screws, connect the speaker cable, and tuck the antenna cable into the groove on the right side of the speaker. Install the logic board and heatsink screws part way. Check the alignment of the I/O ports and adjust if necessary. Then tighten the screws. Remove the cables used for alignment from the rear I/O ports. Replace the mylar tape that covers the screw head located in the lower left corner. Insert the hard drive combo cable and left speaker cable into the clip on the rear housing. Reconnect the audio, microphone flex, power supply signal, left speaker, and camera cables to the logic board. Insert the wireless card support tool. Reconnect the wireless antennas with the antenna tool and replace the 2 antenna screws. Remove the wireless card support tool. Connect the power button cable to the power supply. Check that the power button cable is tucked into the channel of the left speaker. That's how you replace the logic board. Follow the last steps below to complete this repair. Whenever you install a replacement logic board, apply the new Ethernet ID label included in the box with the replacement logic board to the bottom of the stand. Then use blank board serializer to set the iMac serial number after the computer's been reassembled. That's it. Thank you so much for hanging out. Check out the links below. We'll see you soon. Hey, what's up everybody? Diego here. Today our technician Shane is going to show us how to replace the flash storage or SSD on a 21.5-inch iMac. We'll be using the 2017 model, so if you're working with another model, be sure to check your service guide. Ensure that all the customer's data is backed up before removing the flash storage. Start this procedure with the logic board removed, laying on an ESD-safe surface. Be sure to follow the first steps on the page below to begin at this point. The flash storage is located on the back of the logic board. Remove the screws securing the flash storage. Pull the flash storage straight out of the connector. Don't tilt the card up as it may damage the connector. Replacement of the flash storage is just that easy. Be sure that you're using an exact replacement part for your customer's iMac. Now to complete this repair, just reverse the steps. Insert the flash storage straight into the connector. Secure it with the screw. Alright, that's it. Complete the last steps below to finish the repair. When your repair is complete, you'll have to prepare the new hard drive. Refer to the article TP767, Reinstalling the Software that came with the computer. Alright, we'll catch you later. We'll be using a 2017 model, so if you're working with a different model, be sure to check your service guides. Now, check out the first steps located below to start at this point. You'll start this procedure with the logic board removed and laying on an ESD-safe surface. The wireless card is located on the back of the logic board, but there are 2 screws on the front of the logic board that secure it. Remove the screws. Then carefully turn the logic board over. Use the flat end of a black stick to gently loosen the bond of the thermal material between the wireless card and the logic board. Gently wiggle the wireless card out of the connector. Don't tilt the wireless card up as it may damage the connector. Now let's replace the wireless card. Before we start, check the condition of the thermal pad on the replacement wireless card. A damaged thermal pad shows uneven borders or lost adhesion. You should always replace a damaged thermal pad with a new one. Hold the wireless card by the edges and slide it into the connector on the logic board. Gently turn over the logic board and install the 2 screws. Alright, that's it. Complete the last steps below to finish the repair. We'll see you soon.